Bianca! Hey, girl!
Hey!
How are you today?
You know what? Today I've had a good day because in Victoria the sun is shining, and I don't know what it is about the sunshine. It just always makes me smile a little bit more.
Of course. I always think winter doesn't affect me, and then I'm like, nah, it definitely does. When the sun comes out, I'm different.
Yes, definitely. And you know, because of lockdown, I've never appreciated how pretty autumn is. I know it sounds so stupid to say, but I'm like been walking every morning and I'm like, oh my gosh, the autumn leaves are so beautiful. I'm like, who am I?
Who are we? Who are we to appreciate the little things?
I know.
Isn't it? Well, I have to say we were all very thrilled when you said yes. You're very generous with your time, and the team is so pumped to pick your brain. So thank you so much for giving us your time in that beautiful lighting that you're sitting in there.
Oh, yeah, do you like it? No, I'm very happy to. Do you know what? Now that we all have time, I'm more than happy to, I don't know, hopefully help and share and support, especially other female athletes. I would never have got to where I was if it wasn't for other female athletes within my sport and outside of my sport, just helping me and helping me enjoy it along the way. And so, yeah, I'm very happy to try and give back to other female athletes as much as I can.
Yeah, and you are so generous. But I also think it's like, it was your world for so long that it's like, I always get thrilled to talk to people like you to be like able to relive it a bit, because no one else gives a shit unless they're an athlete. Like, you know, like no one's going to feel what you're saying unless they've kind of felt it before or want to feel it, you know?
I know we live in this cult as athletes, male or female. We live in this cult where only we understand what really goes on behind the scenes and how bloody hard it is mentally and physically. And we're just suckers for punishment because we rock up every year and still want to have another go. I don't know why, but we still do. We're just addicted.
There's something, it's the highs of it, isn't it? Anyway, let me just we just acknowledge your highlights, because it's important that we do. I'm sure you'll be uncomfortable, but you shouldn't be uncomfortable. This is where female athletes need to just own how epic they were, you know? But firstly, you were one of, if not the youngest Australian female as an 18-year-old to represent Australia. And you made your debut, obviously, when you were 18. You've played 59 test appearances, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. You won the World Cup in 2007. You won silver in the Com Games in 2006 and gold as vice captain in 2014, right?
Yep. That all happened.
You've really done some stuff here. You've played 244 league matches and captained the Vixens and Phoenix to titles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you were the first player to reach a 100-game milestone for the Vixens, but also you've captained more than anyone else in the domestic comp. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's a good stat.
That's a really cool stat. This is where you become a complete sports nerd. But it's like there's something very special in that because there's so much more to doing that job and playing than just being a player, you know?
Totally.
But we'll dive into that because that's a really cool thing to chat about. But would you mind just chatting about, because you were playing for the Melbourne Phoenix when you were 16 as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like, let's just rewind a little bit and briefly chat about your mentality as a 16, 18-year-old to be playing with the best, literally. Like, obviously talk about your mentality at that point, but when you were a child, like, was there anything now in hindsight that you think, my parents spoke to me differently than other parents spoke to their kids, or I was just different? Like, what was it about you that was like, I'll just do that? Obviously, there's a certain amount of talent, but there's more than that to get to that point at that age.
Yeah, well, you know, and this is something I've only probably been able to articulate since I have retired, is that I'm 6'2", I'm 189 centimeters, and my parents, one's 6 foot, and my mum's 6 foot, my dad's 6'4". And so I was in a tall family. I've got two sisters, they're both 6 foot. And so growing up, I remember my mum, who was in a generation where people weren't very tall and that she stood out in the crowd, and she obviously always had she was self-conscious about her height. And so she was really worried that having 3 girls, that we were all going to be really tall and that we were all going to be worried about our height as well. And so I just always remember mum talking to me about it, about wearing heels and having a good posture, and like, it's okay to be tall. And I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. Like, I didn't really think much about it until I'm at school, and then I'm around normal sized people, and every day people are telling you how tall you are, and I'm trying to fit into my friends' clothes, and I feel like I'm just this massive beast because I don't fit into their clothes. And I honestly, when I look back at when I was playing, whether it was basketball or netball, I love being in a team environment, because I often, just like we all do, we kind of love mucking around and having a bit of fun with our friends. But it was actually the one place where I started to feel confident about myself, and all my self-esteem issues that I had at school, like every girl and boy does, I just felt like I belonged when I was out there playing, because your height is an asset when you're playing sport like a netball or basketball. So I think I didn't realize at the time, but I loved it because I actually just felt good about myself when I was there. And then I think secondly, for me, I had an older sister who was very good at netball. So I used to go and watch her play, and I just had this competitive spirit deep inside me that I'd watch her do something well, and I'd be like, right, I'll show everybody I can do it better. So I just was an annoying little sister to her, and that just, followed her everything. So if it wasn't for her kind of showing me the way, I don't know whether I would have found the way, but I love playing because of my height, and I loved that competitive spirit that I found.
That's the beauty of sport though, isn't it? It gave you that sense of, oh no, I could be good at this. Like, this is an asset that I've got. It's funny that, are you the youngest?
No, I'm the middle. I've got a younger sister, but she's 11 years younger, so it's not really like she's our little sister, you know.
Totally. But it's that grind too. Like, birth order always fascinates me as well, of like the order of kids that are just always getting smashed and just have to crawl to get somewhere, you know. So you think your mindset was just created from being a young girl and just the message your parents were giving you?
Yeah, they would just like go out and be active. They didn't really care. But my dad would always treat us girls like his sons. Like, you know, we'd be out playing footy. We'd be out, you know, playing cricket with him. And he taught me how to be aggressive and stand up for myself. So he wouldn't, you know, you'd have that rough and tumble games out in the backyard. And I just always remember Dad just teaching me how to, like, you know, rip the ball out of his hands and not be timid. And my older sister, I think...
That's such a conscious thing to teach your kid though, isn't it?
Yes. Like, he'd be like, come on, hang on to it. And I'd be like, all right. So then I was like, oh, Dad's proud of me because I'm being really rough and I'm acting like a boy. But my older sister too, I think I always was subconsciously taking in everything that she was kind of struggling with. So she was highly emotional and she was a shooter. If she missed a lot of goals during her game, I remember her being with Mum in the car on the way home and saying, oh, I missed so many goals. And she was really down on confidence. And I just remember watching that going, well, who cares? And seeing how the emotion played into her performance. And so I tried to be a bit more, I think, resilient and a bit like, oh, well, the emotion I can put aside. I'm just going to go out there and play. I don't want to finish a game and be disappointed. Not that I was never disappointed, but I just remember we used to learn a lot from watching her do it all first. So I'm probably very thankful that I got to watch her.
Yeah, that's awesome. Tell me about the differences in, you know, just your mental capability between 06 World Cup or, you know, Com Games and 2014. Like, what was the main difference between those two for you?
So yeah, as you said, I made it as an 18-year-old, and you know when you've got potential next to your name, so everyone's like giving you everything and, oh, yep, you're going to be good. And I sat behind Liz Ellis, who a lot of people would know as a defender. So in the Australian netball team, you don't get a test cap unless you actually take the court. So you can be in the team, but if you sit on the bench the whole test match, you're not going to get a test cap against your name. So I would have sat on the bench behind Liz Ellis for maybe 50 test matches. And I just had to do my time behind her until I got a little opportunities against weaker nations to get on the court. So in 2006 for the Com Games, she was injured and I'd finally got an opportunity to be in the starting 7. And yes, I was good enough and I was playing well enough, but we just weren't a successful team at that stage. We hadn't really got a strong enough culture around us. There were a lot of different issues going on. And so 2006, when we got silver in Melbourne at the Com Games, we probably overachieved even to get that silver medal, which is not really a very Australian netball kind of mentality, but we just had a lot going on, and then got dropped. When I finally got back in 2014, I was in my 30s now, and leadership became more important to me than actually playing the game. I loved the team element. I loved being a part of a culture where it was very supportive and everyone had each other's back. And I'm not saying that in a way where it's just, oh yeah, you know, we all talk. It was actually lived and breathed by the way we all behaved. And that was a really powerful place to be. And I enjoyed contributing to all the team dynamics more than being out there on court. Like, my game became easier to play personally because I was so proud of the young kids playing their first test game, or, you know, doing something you've seen them struggle with at training. I just really enjoyed that part of it. So 2014 to me was much better because, yes, we won a gold medal at the Com Games, but we won a premiership with Melbourne Vixens, and there were so many girls that had won their first premiership, and I just loved being a part of it with them. Yeah,
it sounds like though you found your actual purpose, you know, like you're obviously made to be a leader, but you hadn't been able to like necessarily had an environment where you could use it.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's
different, you know.
I don't know if it's like that in lacrosse, but for us, my Melbourne team, so Melbourne Phoenix and Melbourne Vixens, it was very much like your family. You spend 7 months of the year, 8 months of the year with those girls every single day. And then the Australian team, you only see each other maybe for 2 months a year. It's highly competitive. You know, people are in and out of the team all the time because of form. So you don't really have that family connection and feel like you belong. So I think by the end of my career, I finally felt like I belonged at that Diamonds level, just as much as what I did in my Melbourne side.
That's so cool. So let's just rewind back to that 2010, that gap in between your Com Games, where you mentioned that you didn't get selected for that. Do you mind just diving into what your mentality was when you realised that you hadn't been selected, and then what path you took to say, nah, F this, come back here and make an epic comeback? Like, tell us the steps, like walk us through how you got the news, like when you got the news, and like the thought process to come out of it.
Okay, so in the lead, I was so desperate to go to a Com Games and win a gold medal, because that's what you do as an Australian netballer. And so Melbourne, we got silver. 4 years is a long time, as you all know, to be able to redeem yourselves and have another crack. And so in the 3 years post Melbourne, I was still in the team consistently. I had been getting more court time. I was in my late 20s at this stage. So I felt like I was still good enough, but I'd lost a bit of that spark and that excitement around. I just became a bit complacent. It was same, January was exactly the same as February. And, you know, I was just going through this routine every single year, pre-season, season, couple of weeks off and then go again. And anyway, so in the league, so trials for us with netball, the squad, there's about 25 in the Aussie squad. We all fly into the AIS in Canberra. We'll have like a 5 or 6 day training camp where it's, you know, all your strength testing, all the physical stuff, playing against each other, all the fitness side. And by the end, you're mentally and physically exhausted. You have all the girls in your ear, everyone's trying to pick their team and nobody really knows it, and you're trying to deal with all that noise as well. And you can see the team and the coaches playing different combinations out there, and your head's going crazy, going, oh no, they're putting that play with that defender, and oh my God,
this is so similar. Like, just to have the process of World Cup lacrosse for us too, like small groups, and then you pick it apart, and then what's that mean and what's that mean? It's like, it's totally similar. It's crazy how it is.
Yeah. And so then we get to the end of the 5 days, and what they do is they bring the team into a room, and in alphabetical order, they just read it out. And then if you're not in, you've got to stand up in front of everyone and walk to your little room at the AIS and pack your bags and get yourself to the airport.
Oh shit, does that happen?
Yeah, it's a bit kinder, but it's still pretty brutal. And
we did that like 20 years ago. Like, we're so much kinder now.
Well, we've tried so many different ways, and sometimes we'd fly home and then everyone would call and have a different time that they could call, and you'd find that out. But yeah, this was kind of, so this is 2010, so we didn't even have any welfare real support. So anyway, it was the first time that I'd found myself out of the team in 7 years. And I think the coach had just lost a bit of faith in me and had just been searching for someone to replace me. And that's not to her, like, she was just trying to find what the next kind of generation of player, because the potential that I had at the very start, they felt like maybe that was all I had. And you know, when you don't feel empowered by a coach anymore, you can tell they're looking for other answers. And so, you know, that happened. And when they didn't read my name out, you all had a meeting with the coach before you flew home. And the coach and I had a bit of a frosty relationship. I just was so intimidated by her. And the one thing she said to me, and I was wanting her to tell me, you need to jump high, you need to be fitter, you need to be stronger, you need to, you know, give me something to work on. And she said to me, oh, sorry, B, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. The combinations didn't go your way. And so I was so bitter and twisted just by her not giving me anything tangible that I could go away and work on. And as we do as athletes, we want to be better and we want to push ourselves. And anyway, so she gave me that feedback. I got home. I had about 24 hours until it became public and before netball people knew. And I think what I did and how I felt, I was angry. I was annoyed. I was embarrassed more than anything that the world knows that you're an Australian netballer, and who are you if you don't have that next to your name, or you're not going to Com Games and people seeing you as part of the team. And so once I got home, the key for me of getting myself out of it was I needed a break. So I did need time off, and I needed to get a bit of perspective away from the sport. But I had a couple of mentors or coaches, old coaches in my world who, you know, when someone, whether it's a coach or someone close to you, they really know you, like they know you well enough that they know when to give you a hug. They know when to give you like a rocket and tell you when to pull your head in. And I just had one lady, especially, her name's Joyce Brown, and she was a former Diamonds coach, but, you know, I'd been lucky to be around her. And she basically, first day, she, you know, gave me a hug. Next day, she was like, okay, what do you think you could have done better? And just really asked me questions that I couldn't escape answering. Yeah. And yes, sure, to the whole wider world, I could be still angry and annoyed, but with her, I had to be honest. And yeah, she just got me out of this, I guess, slump of, okay, let's reflect, let's look back, let's think what you could do better. And she didn't push me, and she gave me about 6 months before she really was like, right, what are you going to do now? So I had 6 months. So I still was playing for Melbourne, but I just got to escape and become a normal person in a normal world that I'd never experienced, and found my love again of it. But it was because of her and because of sometimes the brutal questions that she would ask me, and, you know, also picking and choosing when I was around my teammates, and when I didn't want to bitch and moan to the Aussie girls who were about to go to Com Games, because as much as they were caring about me and they wanted me to be in the team, and, you know, some of them my best friends, I also didn't want to be a drainer, because I'd been around a lot of other players in my world that had been drainers when they had missed out, and we're all like tiptoeing around and going, what do we say and how do we keep them included? And so I think I just learned, I was old enough to know that I didn't want to be seen like that, and I didn't want to be a drag. So I had to deal with it on my own with people away from netball. And then when I felt okay and energized and positive enough, I would come back into the netball kind of world and hang out with those people.
Yeah, right. So do you think there was any marginal things you did that made a difference though? Did like strength and conditioning, like visualization, like was there anything you were doing that you think, well, that really moved the needle forward for me? Because did you feel like you were a better player then, or when you came back, or was it just that you were mentally different?
Probably everything. So one, I'd never given myself a break. As athletes, we become so selfish in a way that we have to be, because we have to prepare ourselves. But my whole life was focused around me playing netball and me pushing myself all the time. You know, I think my body was exhausted from having to flog yourself at every session. I just needed to stop and be able to give myself some time to breathe. Yeah. So probably, to cut a long story short, from 2010 to 2011, I'm 6'2", and I was actually getting quite short to play against a lot of the Jamaican shooters. And so they'd replace me with a girl who was 6'5". So what I did go and work on physically was, one, I had to get fitter, but I had to learn and teach myself to be more of a goal defense now than a goalkeeper. Right. And so train myself. So my aerobic capacity, I had to improve that. I had to improve my jump and try and get myself up in the air so I could compete with some of those high balls going in. And I actually really enjoyed being able to train differently, and really enjoyed looking forward to playing against different opposition, because, you know, it'd been 10 years playing against the same shooters. And now I was like, oh, I get to play against these little goal attacks that I can annoy and harass and intimidate and try and figure, you know, get into their heads a little bit. And I really embrace that.
It is a very different position though, isn't it? Like
really different. Yeah. And it was refreshing. It was just everything about, I think in that moment for me, I just made little changes. Nothing I could tell you was like, yeah, that was the game changer for me. It was just lots of little things, I guess, that make up to the big thing in the end, that gets you back there and gets you enjoying it again.
Do you look back on it now and think, fuck yeah, like I'm really proud that I did that? Did you have a moment where you're like, I really pulled that off well?
Well, there was a new Australian coach come in at maybe 2012, right. And I'd been back in the Australian squad at this stage, and I just I'd never had the guts within myself to go up to an Australian coach and say, look, take me or leave me, just promise me that you'll give me a fair go. Like, I would never have said that previously, but this new coach came in and she sat me down, and I just was so honest with her about how I was feeling. I was really vulnerable about the embarrassment of getting dropped, and I didn't want to put myself back into that environment unless I was going to get a fair go. If I was the best player, would she pick me? And not that I wanted her to guarantee it. I just wanted to know that the process wasn't going to be, you know, on the past. And yeah, and she never told me she's going to pick me, but she just said, I promise you, if you are one of the best defenders, I'll take you in the team. I don't care what's happened in the past. And so, yeah, I just fronted up and rather than try and be strong and tough all the time, I just had a few vulnerable conversations that, you know, help myself go forward and not get stuck on what happened in the past.
Yeah, totally. So we can go into this. One of the girls had a really, so you've talked about Joyce Brown. Is she one of the coaches that had the most impact on you, you think?
Yes, definitely. And still, she's in her 80s now, and she's still just someone I always just ring and have a chat to. And just great. Yeah, she's just awesome. And I'm sure you all have those kind of people in your sport too, where these ladies have just been unbelievable. But I also, that core group of Melbourne Phoenix girls when I was 16. So Eloise Southby, Sherelle McMahon, Liz Taverner, Susan Meany, all these girls who, they were just like my big sisters, and they still are. We're all retired now, but we are still all so close. And that's, I think, the key is that I look at a lot of the players now currently in netball, and netball's changed and is more of a full-time sport. The girls are getting paid pretty good money, but they walk away from the sport at the end without the really close relationships, because netball's almost become transactional. It's a bit more like a job for them. Like, oh, I'm not going to go and do that unless I'm paid, or I'm not going to go and, you know, and I don't begrudge them for that, but I also appreciate that I got to play in an era where we were all playing for the love, and we loved spending time with each other.
There is something different in that community, isn't it? Because lacrosse is obviously where netball was, I think, when you probably started. Like, it was really grassroots. There was no funding, you know, it was all just, you played for the love of it, and to put that amount of time and effort in was a certain camaraderie that's lost when there's a paycheck, you know, in some ways. You have to work a lot harder on keeping that connection, I think, when it's, like you said, like the netball is now. But it is really, lacrosse is really similar to netball in that sense, I think, where it's like the self-motivation is so much more internal than external. Like, talk about when you were, even later, because you obviously started when netball wasn't as big as it is now. what things did you do for self-motivation? What was the messages that you would tell yourself to get out of bed and go do it again? The monotony of the training and, you know, because like we talked about before we even jumped on, it was, you know, more is better. Just do more. Just always do more. Run more. Do this. And now it's like, what were we doing? Like just caning our bodies. But like, what were the things you did to keep motivated?
Well, I think for me, it was the close relationships when I was younger with those older girls I spoke about, because I had this overwhelming sense of not wanting to let them down. And I had watched them grow up and be successful before I was even in the team. Like, I didn't want to be the one in that team that caused them to all of a sudden be unsuccessful, which is so ridiculous to think about it. Yeah, but that's what would get me out of bed. Yeah, was to, one, I wanted to spend time with them, but two, I just wanted to learn as much as I could from them. And I wanted to make sure that I owned my space in the team. And they had this very good way of pushing you when you're out there. But they also used to always say to us, and I know it's nothing new, but it really resonated with me, about you are only a custodian of this dress right here and now. And it's our job to leave it in a better condition than what we found it. Yeah, and right. So they said that to me early on. That was my Melbourne dress. And then it became about the Aussie dress, that what can you actually add value to? How can you change it? How can you make sure that the next person can step into this team and feel more comfortable than you did at the start, feel more a part of it than you did at the start? And that just became a huge driver for me. And I got myself in all sorts of like Players Association president roles. And like, I really became a bit of a one that wanted to push the sport forward, because I just listened to them tell me that years and years ago and go, yes, I want to change this sport. I want to move it forward. And I want to make sure that, you know, when I first went away with the Aussie team at 18, I remember the captain never spoke to me of the team. The older players couldn't care less about the younger players. And I remember thinking, if this is what playing for Australia is like, why would you do it? It's not fun. And then by the end of my Australian career, not just because of me, but I know there was like our younger players, they were pretty much running the team, because we made them feel so comfortable. We're like, hang on a minute, we've gone too far the other way. But it was, it was just that was a real thing that I always had in the back of my mind. So I think it's really important for people to understand that we wish we could have it forever, but we don't. So what can you do with it right now?
Yeah, totally. What do you think was different about, you know, when you won gold, for example? Like, I know there are so many facets that go into a successful team. Like, we won the World Cup in 05, and little Australia was never really expected to do that, but we had the belief that we could do it. But it was a combination of great coaching, but really good leadership. Like, we self-managed, you know, like you said, like the older ones incorporated the younger ones, and the younger ones felt comfortable, but also were taught what being an Australian player was actually all about. In your opinion, when you guys won gold and you were a vice captain in that Com Games, what do you think were those elements of that team that made it successful? Like, can you think back now and think of, oh, we were just really connected, or what were the little things that you think made a difference there?
So we went through this big, you know, teamwork. Like, we had leading teams work with us actually. And so we came up with our trademark, which every team has a trademark, but instead of throwing out words every year, we're like, yeah, we want to be determined, we want to be relentless, and having our values. And we just started to actually go on a mission where we're like, we can have all these words, but let's actually do a bit of a deep dive into our team, and what do people think of our team, and what do other countries think of our team. And we all just got really honest with each other. And we would have these sessions where we'd go, okay, what do New Zealand think of us? And New Zealand were our main competitors at the time. And we would go, oh yeah, they think we're pretty good. But the deeper we dove into it, we're like, oh, actually, they think we're arrogant. They think that we, you know, are going to win no matter what. And it's only just the occasional time that they beat us. And we just uncovered all these weaknesses that we had in our own mentality, and what we think that how we want to be perceived was the most important thing in a way. And so how could we change the way we act and behave when we're out there training, when we're out there during game day, so that the message that we want to sell to the world and what we want Australia to be proud of us for, we can actually stand there and showcase that in everything that we do, whether it's public or not. And so this arrogance that we believed that people saw us, we want people to see us to be confident, and doesn't matter who is on this court, that the job is going to get done, and that it is just unbreakable, the link we have between each other. And we even had conversations around, we're not all best friends. We have a respect for each other, that we're all here to do the job. We don't have to hang out and go for coffee with each other all the time. We don't have to have social functions where everyone's invited. We just realized that everybody in the team was adults, and that we were going to go on tour for 4 weeks. So let's treat each other like adults, not like we're at school and have a schedule that we all have to be at 9 o'clock here and 10 o'clock here. And so we came up with a trademark, Sisters in Arms. And it sounds really corny from the outside, but to us, it means a lot, and it still does. And
it's not corny at all to me.
Yeah, it was
like I'm sure you wouldn't even know how far laced that is into other female sports.
Right.
Because we do talk about those kind of themes and stuff, and it always comes up for us.
Yeah. And where it came from was what is that moment in, like, for us playing for Australia that means the most to us, and when we feel the most connected? And so Sisters in Arms was, for us, standing on the transverse line before the games even started, all 12 of us arm in arm with our coaching and medical staff also, singing the national anthem, facing New Zealand or England or whoever we might be playing, knowing that moment right then, we have each other's back. It's before the games even started. No matter what happens next, we have each other's back. If someone misses the goal with 1 second to go, who cares? We've got each other's back. We will deal with it together. And that is just what it was all basically built on. And it was about picking up each other on little things that might happen during the day, because we didn't see that as professionalism, or we didn't see that as living and breathing our values. And we just got really good at not relying on the coaches to be the ones that controlled the team or gave us feedback on everything. The players gave each other just as much feedback as what the coaches did, and we gave the coaches feedback too. And it was just a safe place. It wasn't always easy, but it was a safe place for everybody within the team. And yeah, that's what it was all built on in the end. And I bloody loved it. It was so powerful. If you could bottle it up, you'd bloody make millions out of it. But yeah.
And like hearing it gives me chills, because it's so collaborative, and lacrosse is a lot like that. Like the leaders and the senior players have a lot of back and forth with the coaches, and then everything's really quite transparent and open and collaborative, which is, you can see that those just add so much to successful teams. They all have a common thread,
Yes.
like just doing the small things, and it's always, everyone's supporting everyone. No one's responsible for the last shot they missed of the game. It's all the moments beforehand that everyone could have done. Like, it's awesome.
And I was going to add on that, actually, I don't know if it's just a female thing, but that perfectionism that we all aim for, how we would review each other at the end of the game was that if every single one of us as players got a 7 out of 10 or scored ourselves a 7 out of 10, then we would win the game. So rather than trying to aim that our performances had to be always 10 out of 10 and then be disappointed every single time that we weren't, we would then just go 7 out of 10. That's all we need to get to, 7 out of 10 for all of us, and we will win. And so we would often give ourselves a rating in front of each other. And so if I said, oh, I was a 6 out of 10, someone would go, oh no, I think you're a 7, or I thought you were a 5, or we would get into a habit of being able to have those conversations quite comfortably. And I think that was the big game changer for us, not trying to aim.
The edge off, doesn't it? It takes the fear of failure, probably, that edge off of, I don't have to be perfect if everyone does enough. That's really cool. I really like that. Thanks for sharing that. Tell me what was your favourite moment representing Australia?
I know I should know this a lot, but I changed my mind heaps, actually. But I think my favourite moment in terms of just the experience was walking out into the MCG for the opening ceremony of the Melbourne Com Games. Like, by far, being in Melbourne, I just absolutely love that. And being a part of a bigger Australian team than just netball was cool. But probably, I reckon that 2014 gold medal, and I was on the bench in the end of that quarter, but I just remember it just felt so special because we'd all contributed as much as we possibly can. And I was just relieved. Isn't it funny how we get relief more than anything when we actually get that success?
It's sad, isn't it, though? Because I remember playing too and being like, oh my God, I'm just so glad that's over. And it's like, is that probably not the right thing to feel? But it's like the build-up of it is just so hectic that, like, when it's over, it's just like, oh, I can relax again. You don't realise how much you hold to get to that point.
Mm-hmm. And I just did this leadership course, this Seth Godin leadership course called an Alt MBA in over the last 5 weeks. I've been doing it. I've just finished. And that was a big thing that came out of it for me, is that I've been such an action person my whole life, ticking off goals, ticking off goals, ticking off goals. And some guy in the course questioned me and said, when do you actually sit still and enjoy it? And I was just going, at first I got defensive, and then I was like, you know what? You're so right. We never sit still and go, well done. And if I look back on my career and go, I wish I had done it, I wish I had have stopped and been like, good work. Even if it was just great work, you know, consistently being able to do something that you haven't been able to do. I just, yeah, you gloss over it so much. And yeah, for current players, that's what I wish I had have done. So I hope that you take the time to do it.
What are you, leading off that, what are you, when you think about your career, or, you know, just any moments you had in there, what are you most proud of?
I think I'm most proud of being able to, I guess, find my resilience throughout my career, and being able to come out of the end of my career, not with being the best player I ever thought I was going to be, but being the best team person, because the team means far more to me now than any of the individual stuff that I got. Like, there's far greater netballers that have played the game and got all the great accolades, all of that. But I love what value I was able to bring to a team. And yeah, that means the most to me and all my teammates, I guess, at the end, that I have around me.
It's so great. It is, because it's the gift that keeps on giving, isn't it? Oh,
yes.
It truly is the gift that keeps on giving. Just ignore my child there.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, so let's just briefly talk about players, and, you know, when you think about the people you want to stand next to you, what traits do they have, you know, in a teammate that you look to and be like, oh, she was unreal because of this, this, and this. Obviously, it can be like some have some have others, but if you were moulding your ideal teammate,
yeah,
if there was one, you know, obviously no one's perfect, but what do you think those characteristics are?
Well, I used to think that it was, you know, you wanted people that were just going to be physically super strong and mentally super strong. But now what I realize is it's more the teammates that are actually super honest about their vulnerabilities, that, you know, you can work on it together. So, you know, yes, there's freakish athletes that are really gifted, and, you know, they come few and far between. But it's when athletes never admit to their shortcomings and they try and gloss over them and try and hide over them, that you really don't, it takes too long to get to the bottom of it. By that time, you know, you've lost so much value in that player. So I now cherish the players that are willing to say, hey, I don't know what to do in this situation. Or, you know, even me, when I had the guts to go, I don't know what to do either. And we work on it together. So I think it's more players that are willing to be just really, really raw about where they're at, and knowing that there's a lot of support around them, whether it is for the mental side or the physical side. But yeah, just not pretending that they've got their shit sorted, because none of us do.
It's so true though. It's like, and you're never not learning, are you? So yeah, while we're on that topic, you know, that this is one of the things that's fascinated me about sports, and I'm going to ask all the people we interview or chat with, that there is that space between good and great. You know, that talent takes you to good, and then there's that area in between that you got to. And I love to hear people's understanding of what this is in here that gets you to this point. You know, it's like, and some of it's so basic, and then other parts of it are so complex, you know, but it's different for everybody. What do you think for you when you think of that space in between? What do you think lies in there?
Isn't this bad? The first thing I was thinking of was more the players that I think went from good to great, rather than actually me. Like it's hard to, yeah. Because you always go to the players that you were like, oh yeah, they were better. Like Sherelle McMahon for me was by far the best player that I ever got to play with.
Don't you think it's partly too because you can visualize them? Like, yes, because you were watching them all the time. When you're in your body, you don't
feel it as much.
Yeah.
That
and I used to just admire, like, I'd be like, damn you, you're so fit and you don't even have to train hard. Like, what is it? Oh, I think the really great players, and when I was at my very best, in my core, like in my soul, I just knew that everything I was doing was for the team, right? That the passion, everything that I had within me was either making the good decision for the team, was like pushing my body for the best position on the team for me. Like, it was just channeling everything for the actual team.
Yeah.
And when players can actually do that, I think it takes the pressure off yourself as well, because you just have to play a little role within a bigger team. You don't have to take over and win the game for the team. You just have to do this little thing on the side and it's fine. And then everyone does their little thing and it all makes up to being one big thing. Mm-hmm. So I think the great players could really just keep doing the simple little things that were the best thing for the team. And yeah, it just is the power of numbers, because if 75% of the team are like that, then you're generally going to cancel out the 25 that aren't.
Yeah, it's the beauty of team sports, isn't it?
Yeah, and we used to think that, and I mean, this might be helpful too from a leadership perspective. You're always going to have people on a team that behaviours potentially don't match up to what everybody else expects. Or there might be players on a team that are more individual than other players. And that's okay, but we used to have this philosophy where you'd have your players at one end of the scale, where you might have a couple of them, they were just your real team people, would do anything for the team, you knew they were being honest, and you'd have this middle group of people that could be, they could go either way. They could be really teamy, or they could be quite individual, but they were very influential where they were sitting. Mm-hmm. Then you had a group of people at the end. They were just on their own, and it took a lot to convince them to be on the team side of things. And they used to always say to us, as leaders, focus all your attention on the ones that can be influenced. So if you can influence this major group of people to move to the side where, it's all team first, and the other people on the side, they need to make their choice. They either go with the majority, or then they'll end up behaving themselves out of the team. And we saw that a lot happen. It wasn't us making the decisions who was in the team or not, but eventually their performance would come undone because the team wasn't at the forefront of their minds. And it would take sometimes a few years, but you eventually got there. So spend your energy on the people that are ready to be influenced and want to be influenced.
That's really good advice, because it's sometimes hard to separate between, who the players we can help bring along versus the ones that don't really want to be brought along, or just our own minds in the sense, are we doing enough? It's just a good self-check for us too, to be like, well, what group are we in, ourselves.
And you only have so much energy, and you can do, I felt so many times I'd get so depleted. I'd get home, I'd be so exhausted, just because I tried to change everyone. I tried to give people more my energy and trying to change their mind on the way they were thinking. And yeah, you've got to be very protective of yourself and your energy that you give. Surround yourself with people that give you that energy. And when you're feeling up to it and you're feeling in a good space, that's when you attempt to try and help the people that don't want to be helped. Mm-hmm. But yeah, don't do it all the time, because it doesn't always pay off.
What was your leadership style? Do you have a leadership style that you're aware of, that you're conscious of?
I think I built my leadership style from all the leaders that I had along the way. I'd take a lot of the things that were great and made me feel good, and I'd try and not do the stuff that didn't make me feel good. I think it would change a lot, and it would evolve depending on who else was in the team as well and what they needed. But by the end, I had a lot of younger players in the team. So I always just wanted to be respected. I didn't necessarily aim to be everybody's best friend. And that might seem a bit harsh, but I just always knew that the team had to come first over and beyond any friendship that we had in the team. So I would like to get everybody's opinions. I would like to make sure that everyone had buy-in, but sometimes you had to come over the top and make a decision that you knew was the right thing for the majority and not everybody. So yeah, I don't think I had a specific style. I probably did, but yeah, I just like to be collaborative as much as possible, and then make decisions where I needed to.
That's great. So let's end on 2 questions. And then I want to ask you about the Ignition project anyway, but you tell us your favorite podcast, book, movie that you go to for motivation, inspiration. At the moment, see, I'm not a movie person. I'm a big podcaster. I just like hearing. What was that?
Love a good podcast.
Oh, I love them so much.
Yeah.
I love people's stories. I don't even care if they're athletes or not. I just love listening to people's stories and hearing how they've gone from here to here to here to here. So at the moment, I'm loving The Deep by Zoe Marshall. I don't know if you've listened to it. She's just, I worked with her on House of Wellness TV on Channel 7, and she, so she's just interviewing the most incredible people. Like one girl gave birth in prison, and she talks about that experience and what that was like. Like just gives you so much perspective to realize that, oh, actually life isn't that tough for some of us. So The Deep by Zoe Marshall is definitely my favorite. I don't think it's really inspiring, but it's just very interesting.
That's good though. It's good to mix it up. And lastly, obviously quite loaded, but what do you think the most valuable lesson sport has taught you about life?
I think self-reflection, I think, is so important, and we do it after a game, and we learn so much about that. But when in real life, how often do we actually sit back and think, what could I be doing better, and how can I have a conversation better, and how can I try and add value? And self-reflection is huge, and also having an optimistic problem-solving approach. We learn that unbelievably as athletes, and you probably don't even realize it when you're in it, but when you're under pressure and all this stuff is going on, and in the middle of a game you've got to make a decision, we're instantly problem solving and trying to figure out what's the best way to go, rather than worrying about all the shit that's happened and what might not work. And we have this ability to do it in such a short amount of time. And funny, but when I was on the block doing a reality TV show, they thought,
by the way,
the producers said to us, they underestimated female athletes. They thought we were going to cry because we didn't have a trade, we didn't know what we were doing, we were going to be under pressure. And every time they'd yell and scream at us, or they'd have a go, we're instantly problem solving. How can we do it better? How can we fix it? We're not the experts. You need to tell us. And they could not stand that approach that we had. And we were like, oh, that's just athlete life. Like, what are you talking about? So yeah, I just love that. That's what we've got out of being athletes.
It's such a good, that's another thing you don't really think about that you're just used to doing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Side note, was the block awesome?
I loved it. I've been a fangirl, and do you know what? You guys actually really helped me out, because I'd applied for 3 years to get on the show, and they don't really want athletes. They don't really want people who are known. And show and tell, Monty came over to my house and did a story on my house, like for realestate.com.au.
We did do that, didn't we? Yes. It was years ago.
But in that Q&A, I had said, Monty had said, what are you going to do when you retire from netball? And I had said, I want to go on the block. I love the block. My dad's a builder and rah, rah, rah. And so when they were contemplating putting us on the show, they had found that article online and had said, oh, we realized you were a true fan because you'd been saying it for years. I know. Oh, can you believe that?
Sorry. Jeez, that feels like a lifetime ago, doesn't it?
Oh, a lifetime. And so I'd said that in your article and said it in the paper, and then they were like, okay, we'll give you a go because you're a true fan. I'm like, yes.
That's so cool. It looks like such a pressure cooker in that place. Is it a pressure cooker?
Yeah, it's the hardest thing I've ever done, because it's in a 3-month period of time. Like, you just, no welfare support. No one cares how much food you're drinking, eating, how much water you're drinking. Like as athletes, you're so contained in the life that you live. So yeah, it was so tough, and you don't sleep. But also you walk away going, how cool, we built this. So I loved it. So I was paranoid, but I loved it.
Well, thank you. I know you are doing some really cool stuff with the Ignition Project, which is a leadership, right? Like a leadership program that you deliver.
Yeah, so I have an online course, and the Ignition Project, it was an online platform. So at the moment I'm creating another course on that, but I'm doing a lot with female athletes, young female athletes, too, through Rebel Sport, running lots of like webinars and different things. So yeah, I feel like I've got my hands in quite a few things, and I'm taking my time over COVID just to go, all right, Bianca, let's just concentrate on a couple rather than 100.
It's the fast pace you're used to, isn't it?
I know, always action-packed.
Yeah, totally. Well, we are huge fans of yours. You are one of the toughest Aussie netballers that has ever graced that court. And we're just thrilled to be able to go inside your mind just for a little bit at least, to just understand what makes athletes tick, so that we can at least move the needle forward individually in our own visions, and then, like you said, collectively come together as a team and just bring the best that we can for each other, really. But thank you so much, Bianca. That was so great.
No worries at all. And I want to keep following the journey and hear where lacrosse is and how it all happens over the next couple of months, because it's not easy, but I tell you what, it'll be worth it once you get through it.
It's always worth it, isn't it? It's just got to
Sure is. That's why we're suckers and we keep going back.
So true. Hold on, let me just